Retail geographies in context, from informal street vending to Muslim spaces. This thesis aims to understand the complex relationship between retail and urban spaces and processes, through a focus on three distinct yet interconnected topics: informal street vending, the halal meat supply chain, and Muslim spaces in Turin. The first chapter of the thesis examines the phenomenon of informal street vending, which is often seen as a resource or coping strategy. However, in many urban contexts, the presence of informal vendors in public spaces also creates debates and negotiations around using these spaces. This chapter explores how informal street vending can be understood as labor and economic activity and as a form of contested and negotiated space in urban environments. The second chapter shifts the focus to the halal meat supply chain, a diverse economy or alternative food network. However, this chapter argues that the halal meat supply chain can also be a source of conflictual spaces. This chapter examines how the needs of Muslim consumers and the broader political and economic context of non-Muslim countries shape the halal meat supply chain. The third chapter narrows the focus to the specific case of Turin, examining the relationship between Muslim spaces and secularisation. By examining how mosques and halal butcher shops were originally closely related but have evolved, the chapter results suggest that these spaces are perceived and experienced differently by different individuals and groups. This chapter argues that while the initial intention of the study was to find contested and conflictual spaces, the Muslim community in Turin did not share or notice any conflicts around religious-related retail spaces. All three chapters refer to retail. Chapter 1 is about a type of retail which is usually considered a resource or coping strategy, but it is also sometimes a traditional activity in some cities. In urban contexts, informal street vending usually creates debates or the negotiation of its presence in public spaces through relationality. Chapter 2 refers to halal meat retail and chain of production. Both answer to the need for religiously characterized products by Muslims in non-Muslim countries. Chapter 3 narrows the study to the specific case of Turin, considering halal retail spaces inside a broader Muslim ecosystem. As for chapters 1 and 2, the initial intention of chapter 3 was to find contested conflictual spaces, namely halal retail spaces, as part of the conflicts contestation mainly aimed at official religious spaces such as mosques. Nevertheless, the Muslim community in Turin did not share or notice any conflicts around religious-related retail spaces. Still, it talked about the functioning and evolution of these spaces that relate to other spaces and the city's spaces, or a lack thereof. Another topic of this thesis is food. In these cases, food has an ambivalent outcome when related to retail in urban spaces. On the one hand, it's retail in specific spaces for specific parts of the population. In these cases, urban poor classes provides an alleviation or coping strategy for poverty or specific religious minorities' needs. On the other hand, spaces or activities related to it can become conflictual, negotiated or contested.